The unspoken vow. Sophia Carter adjusted the veil on her head, her hands trembling slightly. She stood in the back room of the old chapel, staring at her reflection in the antique mirror. The soft ivory lace of her wedding dress hugged her frame, and the delicate embroidery shimmered faintly in the golden light filtering through the stained glass window. It was a day she had dreamed of, planned for, and waited for, her wedding day. Yet, as the soft strains of the organ music drifted through the air, she felt an inexplicable unease. It wasn't the nerves of getting married. Sophia loved Daniel with all her heart. He was kind, thoughtful, and dependable, the steady anchor she had always wanted. But something about the chapel felt off. The air was heavier than it should have been, the shadows in the corners of the room deeper and darker. She had chosen this place because it held sentimental value. Her grandparents had been married here, and so had her parents. The chapel had been in the family for generations, a symbol of enduring love. As Sophia turned away from the mirror, her eyes caught a flicker of movement in the reflection. She spun around, her heart racing, but the room was empty. Shaking her head, she took a deep breath. "It's just nerves," she whispered to herself. Moments later, her maid of honor, Clara, entered the room. "Sophia, it's time," she said with a warm smile. Sophia nodded, her unease momentarily forgotten. She gathered her bouquet and walked to the chapel doors, where her father waited to escort her down the aisle. The doors opened, revealing the long aisle lined with candles and flowers. Daniel stood at the altar, his face lighting up as their eyes met. Sophia felt a wave of calm wash over her. The ceremony began, and everything seemed perfect. The vows were exchanged, the rings slipped onto fingers, and the chapel filled with applause as Daniel and Sophia were pronounced husband and wife. Yet, as they walked back down the aisle hand in hand, Sophia's unease returned. She glanced over her shoulder at the stained glass windows, where the sunlight seemed to cast shifting patterns, almost as if they were alive. The reception was held in the garden behind the chapel. Laughter and music filled the air as friends and family celebrated. Sophia tried to push her feelings aside, focusing on the joy of the day. But as the sun began to set, she noticed a figure lingering at the edge of the garden. It was a man, dressed in an old-fashioned suit, standing perfectly still. She blinked, and he was gone. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked, noticing her distraction. Sophia forced a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just a little tired." Daniel kissed her forehead. "Let's sneak away for a bit. You deserve a moment to breathe." He led her to a quiet corner of the garden, where a stone bench sat beneath a sprawling oak tree. As they sat together, Daniel took her hands in his. "Sophia, today is the start of our forever. I promise to always stand by you, no matter what." His words were heartfelt, and Sophia felt her unease melt away. She leaned into him, their surroundings momentarily forgotten. But when they returned to the celebration, the strange figure appeared again, this time closer. Sophia's breath hitched as she realized she recognized him. That night, after the guests had left and the newlyweds were alone in their honeymoon suite, Sophia couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day's events in her mind. The figure, a man she hadn't seen in years, had been her childhood friend, Henry. They had grown up together, inseparable until the summer before college. Henry had confessed his feelings for her, but Sophia, overwhelmed by the complexities of young love, had pulled away. Soon after, Henry had vanished from her life. She had tried to find him, but it was as if he had disappeared completely. Over time, she'd come to terms with his absence, chalking it up to a lost friendship. But seeing him now, on her wedding day, brought a flood of memories and questions. The next morning, Sophia told Daniel she wanted to visit the chapel again. "I just feel like I need to say a proper goodbye to the place," she said. He agreed, offering to come along, but she insisted on going alone. When she arrived, the chapel was quiet, the morning light casting a serene glow over the pews. Sophia walked to the altar, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. She stood there for a moment, her hand brushing the edge of the wooden lectern, when she heard a faint whisper. "Sophia." She turned, her heart pounding. The chapel was empty, but the voice had been unmistakable. "Henry," she called out, her voice trembling. From the shadows near the stained glass windows, Henry stepped forward. He looked almost the same as she remembered, though his face bore a hint of sadness. "It's really you," Sophia whispered. "But how? Where have you been?" Henry hesitated, his eyes searching hers. "I've always been here, Sophia. I've watched from afar, hoping you'd find happiness. But I couldn't stay silent any longer." Sophia's mind raced. Why now?" He took a step closer. "Because I needed to tell you the truth. That summer before college, I left because I made a promise, a vow to protect you. There were things I couldn't explain then, and maybe I still can't. But I've always been watching, making sure you were safe." Sophia shook her head, confusion mingling with disbelief. "Protect me from what? What are you talking about?" Henry's expression darkened. "There are things in this world, Sophia, things we can't see but that are very real. This chapel, it's more than just a building. It's a place of power, a connection to something greater. And with that comes danger. I made a vow to shield you from it." Sophia stared at him, her mind reeling. The rational part of her wanted to dismiss his words as nonsense, but deep down, she felt a flicker of understanding. The unease she had felt, the shifting shadows, the figure in the garden. It all began to make sense. "You're saying the chapel is connected to something supernatural?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Henry nodded. "Your family has always been tied to this place, and that connection has made you vulnerable. But today, seeing you marry Daniel, I knew I had to step away. You're strong now, Sophia. You don't need me anymore. Sophia's heart ached at his words. Henry, you've been protecting me all this time? Why didn't you tell me? Because it wasn't my place, he said gently, and because I couldn't bear to burden you with the truth. I wanted you to live a normal life. Tears filled Sophia's eyes as she stepped closer to him. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking. For everything. Henry smiled, a hint of relief softening his features. You don't need to thank me. Just promise me one thing. Live your life fully, without fear. You deserve that. Before Sophia could respond, Henry stepped back into the shadows. The sunlight from the stained glass windows grew brighter, filling the chapel with a warm glow. When it faded, he was gone.
Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, and share our channel Magic Mingle with your friends to enjoy more magical stories.